But let's talk about the NBA Finals. Our Mr. Basketball, Brenden Whitted, joins us on the Adam Gold Show to do that. We have not had any. We've only had WNBA like angst to deal with over the last several days. I'm done talking about it. It's for the most part, it's much ado about nothing. But real quick before we get into the nuts and bolts of the finals. Because I thought Angel Reese had a point in that, yes, I understand that Caitlin Clark has elevated the interest in the sport. But she's not the only reason that the interest of the sport has elevated. And because the numbers have been going up for several years, I mean, clearly there's been a spike thanks to Caitlin. But ultimately, I think all of these women who are trying to prove a point to her right now are down the road going to also thank her because there's going to be a lot more money coming in based on, to a large degree, what she has been able to do in terms of generating interest.
Well, you don't have to just go to Reese, though. Like, think about all the other people. I mean, we talk about Don Staley as a coach, but Don Staley as a player was one of the faces of the league. Yeah. And Lisa Leslie, and we've had Rebecca Lobo has been, she's a commentator now, but she was one of, like, you can go back as far, like, Caitlin Clark has overshadowed pretty much everywhere she's gone, even to the point of, hey, I'm the all-time scorer in college. Well, kind of. You're the all-time scorer in the NCAA because it was actually I can generally understand like some amount of animosity coming. Like if you're an accounting firm, let's take it out of sports. If you're an accounting firm and you just hire somebody out of college and they get the corner office, well, hold on for a second, Playboy. Like I've been here, I've been putting in this work, and now all of a sudden you're coming to take. So I can understand some of that animosity. And also, Caitlin Clark really kind of just be talking to people reckless on the court. Like everybody, like opposing players, referees, her own teammates sometimes. Like, so I can understand some animosity from that point of view. She is somebody that the WNBA has clearly gotten behind. It's the reason that the Fever play like 12 games in about 22 days. They're consistently in prime time. It's a competition. It's a competition sport. You're supposed to have animosity. You're supposed to have beef with one another. Let's roll the ball out and let's go get it, man. Like, that's there are larger issues at play here with about people maybe having platforms and maybe doing a little bit too much in a sport that they don't cover, and it's okay for them to pass the ball. And it's also okay for people for new fans to be like, hey, I have an opinion on this, because that's how this goes. If your growth is not always pretty and perfect, like you're going to have a whole bunch of new people in front of their TV sets and they're going to have opinions. That's kind of how sports goes too. So I think there's nuance on both sides on some real giant.
All right, Kristaps Porzingis is apparently back for the Boston Celtics. We haven't seen him in a minute. It's a game changer for Boston. It gives them a third spoke on the wheel that is just different. But why do I think Dallas is more than equipped to handle this?
They are. Dallas they're kind of amphibians in the way that they have the depth and talent to be able to change what they want to do, whether it's Gafford, whether it's Lowry, whether it's Cleveland. Like, they can do a lot of different stuff, particularly at the big situations. You have DJJ and PJ Washington at your wings. They have the depth to change and do things as they see fit. I'm very interested to see if we're going to see more Dante Exum, a guy that, he was number 5 pick in 2014, only played about 21 minutes in that Minnesota series, but played really well for them. Like, this dude was in Serbia last year, and he got all the way back to the NBA and gave them good minutes throughout the regular season. He's 6'5", he's about 215, 220, and he's a guy that I could see them throwing on Tatum or Brown at any given moment. He was a good defender for them this year. I would look for him particularly because he's a good catch and shoot 3-point guy, so he can still be a floor spacer. I would look to see a little bit more of him in terms of matchup stuff.
Dante Exum was drafted in 2014.
Yeah, I had to look it up today. Yeah, I had to look it up.
Feels like it wasn't that long ago.
No, it doesn't.
But this guy was supposed to be the truth coming out of Australia.
Number 5 pick to Utah. Yeah. And I say 2014 has only played like 6 NBA seasons because of the injury and stuff. Like,
okay.
Tough.
All right, one of the things, Brenden Whitted is joining us here as we're getting ready for the NBA Finals, which will start tomorrow night in Boston. Celtics are a pretty big favorite in this series. Derek Lively is starting to get a lot of pub. I like it, but at the same time, I don't like it because I was hoping that this would just continue to be a little bit under the radar. But he can't be under the radar, can he?
Nah. We're too deep into the season. He's played too well. You know, you see the field goal percentage, like, oh, he made all his shots. It's not just that he made all his shots; it's that he's staying in his lane. You know, he knows what he's there for. He even as the success that he's building and stuff, you don't expect him to try to go out there and do anything extra. That's a comfort when you have players like Luka and Kyrie. Let's make sure that we keep the main thing, and then the other guys can do it. He's also very good on that short roll, and that is a very small part of his game, but it's kind of a cog in the wheel of that Dallas Mavericks team. When you get Luka or you get Kyrie, they're going to want to trap, and Lively's going to roll. He's going to roll short. The help is going to come from either the strong side or weak side, and he always seems to find the right guy in the right place, and a lot of times those end in open three-point attempts. That's a huge part of their game, and for a rookie to have that sort of cognizance about where his teammates are and what the right play is, that's exceptional.
He has just been tremendous. It started out just defensively, but, man, he can do so much. We saw the difference in Dallas in the game he didn't play, right? Yeah. I mean, the game he didn't play was the only game in the series that they lost. I love what this kid brings. Now, can he step away from the basket? I think he can, and at least, bother Porzingis.
Yeah, I think he's been a better perimeter defender than I gave him credit for coming out of Duke. Maybe I just didn't see it, or maybe I just didn't give him credit for. He's been fine there. For the most part, Porzingis is a catch-and-shoot guy out there. He's not going to do any sort of initiating. So as long as you stay pat, stay whole, I think they're comfortable playing five-out defense, which is what Porzingis can do. I think Porzingis' real superpower for this specific Celtics team is his ability to play in the post. I don't know if that's necessarily what they're going to want to do a lot because Lively's such a good defender, but that's what kind of unlocked a lot of their stuff during the regular season. That's why we saw that juggernaut. That's why they finished number one in the offensive efficiency this year. It's because it wasn't all drive and kick, which is what we've seen from the Celtics for the past few years. They could occasionally settle down, get in that half court, and just dump it to him with about 10 seconds left in the shot clock. And if the double comes, he's capable of making that pass, but he's also very much capable of finishing.
Brenden Whitted is joining us here. NBA Finals begin tomorrow night. You can listen to it on The Fan, by the way. If you are listening in Raleigh and just happen to be driving around, by all means, pop it on. Boston has been here before. A couple of years ago, Golden State. Look, Golden State's a historically great team, even though they really weren't at the height of their powers. They still had that ability. And frankly, it's one that Boston probably would love a do-over on. This is their do-over. Do they have enough positive experience in the playoffs? I mean, they haven't won anything. They've certainly been around it a lot. They sniffed it a lot. A lot of Eastern Conference final appearances once to the NBA Finals. They have too much scar tissue?
Nah, I don't think so. They're here now, right? Like they've gotten here now. Do they have? You could argue that they had the easiest road to get here.
It wouldn't be much of an argument.
I mean, yeah, Dallas. I think it's
by a lot.
Since they went to the 8-team format. I think Dallas is only the third team to beat 3 straight teams of 50+ win teams, right? Like so, every single step of the way they were going up against somebody. Meanwhile, Boston, no Butler in the first round. No Donovan Mitchell at some points, no Halliburton. Like so, they've had a pretty good run to get here. But this was always the thing: can you prove it here? Right. It'll be interesting to see whether or not they're going to be able to close out some of these games. Closing out close games became a little bit of a bugaboo for them late in the season. And Indiana gave one away early in that series. I think it was game one of that series. They just gave it away.
To win that one.
I mean, like Boston was throwing up all over itself, and the Pacers just handed them a tissue. Like they did every single thing that they could to help them through that, and Dallas won't do that. So Boston was able to get away with these pockets of just bad basketball. Tatum in particular, where it just looked like he just could not figure out what was going on. those windows are going to be fewer and far between versus the Mavericks because they have great closers on that team and they won't blink.
Right.
Boston's going to have to win those games, and their opponents are just not going to fall apart.
Yeah, I think if you go back to that series, it was a sweep, but Indiana gave game one away. We talked about it after game one. I'm like, look, Indiana, bless your hearts. You ain't that good. You can't give away a game. Yeah. This was the game you had to win just to make the series interesting. And frankly, Boston, I think, just played okay for the most part in the series, and it was still a sweep. The games were entertaining and exciting because they were close and dramatic, but I think Boston kind of made them so, as opposed to Indiana doing that. I'm not trying to take anything away. I just thought it was more Boston playing down than Indiana playing up.
You hate the Pacers. I completely understand.
I don't really. It was too bad that they didn't have Tyrese Halliburton. They have some nice players. I liked him. I didn't like the way they closed out game one. Dallas, I'm not worried about Luka Doncic, but I want to spend a little time with you on Kyrie Irving. You heard LeBron James' clip from Mind the Game, the podcast he does with JJ Reddick. And we're going to talk about Reddick before we let you go here in a second. And what he said about Kyrie, he wishes he was still the running mate. He said that Kyrie is the most talented player the league has ever seen, which I don't think LeBron is necessarily. I'm not going to qualify it. I don't think he's wrong. I think Kyrie has more skill than anybody that we've ever seen. And now that he's sort of relaxed, right? He's not trying to prove a point to everybody all the time. I think we're seeing like the Kyrie that can pick his spots.
Yeah. I
think he is the most dangerous player in the finals.
I mean, Luka was just so overwhelmingly dominant. 32, 10, and 8. I mean, on some stupid shooting splits. But Kyrie is incredibly dangerous. So, I mean, I don't want to oversimplify this, but it kind of feels like it's going to come down to a 2-on-2 game, right? Like who has the better two? Like who is it Brown and Tatum or is it Kyrie and Luka? Like I don't want to boil it down just to that. There are a ton of other factors.
Right.
But man, I mean, if you're telling me who's the best between those, you could give me any combination of those four, and I'd at least be willing to listen to your argument. Kyrie has been able to play off ball so well, and that's what I wasn't 100% sure of. Obviously, I knew he could play off ball because he did it with LeBron to a championship.
Yeah. But
I was wondering how that was going to work for Luka because Luka doesn't dominate the ball in the same way that LeBron does. And so I think Luka's capitulated a little bit too. It's been a lot about what Kyrie and how he's changed his game. I think Luka has changed as well. He's been a little bit more willing to give it up, particularly early in the shot clock, and move off of a spot. That was always my thing. He just stood. If he passed the ball, you knew where Luka was going to be. As soon as he got it back, he'd be right back at the top of the key. I think he's done a little bit better job of moving and playing off of somebody because that was, to me, what I hadn't seen. I hadn't seen that. I'd seen Kyrie do it. Hadn't seen Luka do it. Yeah. Together, they're peanut butter and jelly, man. Like they are fantastic.
I love peanut butter and jelly. Brenden Whitted is joining us here. So Dallas, I think Dallas wins the series. I think Kyrie is the MVP of the finals. What do you say?
I think Dallas wins. I think it's going to be Luka. I think as good as Kyrie is, Luka has the scoring that Kyrie can give you. I don't know if I believe that Kyrie can orchestrate the offense in the same way that Luka can in terms of the assists that he's going to consistently give you. Now, not taking anything away from his playmaking ability, I just don't think it's on par with where Luka's is. And if they're going to win, I think it has to be with Luka controlling the rock in a similar fashion than he did versus Minnesota.
You're probably right about that. By the way, Luka's amazing. He gets better all the time. He has blown me away. What's the matchup like, Drew Holiday defensively against Kyrie Irving? Is that a good matchup for Boston, or is that a problem area because while Drew is physically strong, Kyrie might be able to get around him?
No, I think that's a great matchup. The thing that really sunk Minnesota to me when they were playing Dallas was the fact they had to have Anthony Edwards play to play Kyrie.
Right.
That was too much running around. You can't be he was the initiator on pretty much every half court set. On top of also having to run around with Kyrie. Kyrie was really moving off ball. If you looked at that stuff he was doing, he wasn't static. He was making Anthony Edwards work for it. They have two guys in Derek Brown and Drew Holiday that they can always go sick on both of those pocket aces that the Mavericks have, and still keep Tatum and Brown in reserve, even though both of those guys are fantastic defenders and can put them. And I'm sure that they'll see some of that. The stuff with matchups. The first thing that I'm thinking about is Luka in that super high pick and roll. They had him starting that pick and roll at the half court line. And so you have to respect it because he will pull from there with 15 seconds left on the shot clock. He will legitimately do it, and it's a good shot. So you have to stay up and stay ready. And so if you're going to blitz, you got to blitz, and that's a long way to go to get back on defense, man. If they play 4-on-3 and you're running downhill, all of a sudden you've got a sprint back to get defensively back into that play. It got to the point where Minnesota was just throwing two guys at them. Didn't need to bring a screen because they were just going to throw two. Again, a long way to go back. How are you going to combat that? Boston works out the best, I think, amongst all the teams that Dallas has played in terms of defensively. Like just they're so able to switch pretty much everything. Okay. Horford's able to play more off of the benches instead of playing these big minutes because that would have been an issue. Like Porzingis, he's a much better shot blocker at this point in his career than Horford is, and he can kind of they'll do some stuff. They usually switch 1 through 4 and have Porzingis just kind of play zone. But Boston is going to be a really, really tough defensive assignment for the Mavs.
All right, final thing for Brenden Whitted. You like Dallas though in the series, right?
I do. I'll take Dallas in 7.
Okay, I think it's going to be an amazing series. Real quick before we say goodbye, JJ Reddick is the leading candidate, it appears, to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. This is the best choice they could have made?
Listen to me, Gold. Nobody knows anything. Nobody. Because the head coach of Dallas Mavericks, they were calling for his head this time last year. A whole bunch of national pundits had a whole bunch of stuff to say about what he was as a coach. That man incorporated Lively, incorporated PJ and Gafford as a mid-season acquisition. He's got Kyrie for whatever personal maturation Kyrie has gone through. Jason Kidd you have to give him some credit for that and molding this. He has played this thing beautifully. They were a 5 seed heading into the finals. Everybody wanted him gone last year. So if you think Reddick's going to be good, if you think it's going to be bad, guess what? Everybody is guessing. Obviously, he knows what he's doing. Now there have been reports that part of what intrigued the front office was his podcast. So I'm now submitting my bid for the Hornets job. In case anybody if anybody's out there that's H.U. Cosell, holla at your boy. But that's nobody knows anything. So obviously he has a good relationship with LeBron, which is a big part of any sort of coaching a LeBron team. He knows the material, but it's also going to be about what they're able to do in terms of personnel, right? Like it's not going to be a 1-for-1. Like to me, that was one of the biggest things. That wasn't that good of a Lakers team last year or this most recent year. They have to get better if they're going to talk about anything about championship, anything.
I agree. Like I said before, he could be a good coach.
Yeah, he might.
There's a lot of things he has to overcome. The speed of the game, not on the court, but on the sideline. As things happen fast, your decision-making has to be rapid fire. It's easy for us to sit at home and watch and say, why aren't you calling a timeout? All of these things. Hey, Rick Carlisle lost control of Game 1, Indiana-Boston. It was Carlisle that screwed that up, not his team. And he's been a coach for a long time, including in Dallas. Brenden Whitted at H.U. Cosell on Twitter, Bison Express, and maybe the next coach of the Charlotte Hornets. All right, man. I appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon.
Love it too, man. Looking forward to it. Man.
Hey, why not? I mean, he could be the coach of the Hornets, and I don't know. I could be the manager of the Mets who are going to London.